What's going on, guys? I'm Tim Kelly. He's Anthony SanFilippo. This is Phillies Stoplight and is the first edition of 2026. So happy New Year, Anthony, and
Ha-
everyone listening.
yes, Happy New Year, Tim. And want to remind everyone that in this new year, Philly Stoplight is still sponsored by our good friends at Wapner Newman, Philadelphia's personal injury attorneys.
One of my favorite things I do every January 1st is I put out my first open, and I don't know. I haven't gone back and traced the accuracy, but it's just kind of a fun thing as the calendar flips to January that you can kind of start to see the light at the end of the tunnel and the baseball season and warmer weather and everything beginning to near. So we're going to go through my first projection today. You can read the full thing with analysis at On Path. Anthony has not seen it yet, so I kind of want to just get his instant reaction at the
Okay.
time of us recording this.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I always love a good lineup discussion, even though you know how I feel. It only matters the first two guys to me are the only ones that matter. Everyone else is kind of like, whatever.
Well, if that's the case, we're going to have an interesting discussion here because the first two guys are going to be different than what it was in the postseason. So, leading off, not a surprise, is Trey Turner at shortstop. He won the batting title last season, uh, used his legs a little bit more. Dave Dombrowski said in the postseason that, or after the season, that the Phillies were very happy. They don't need him to go back to trying to hit for more power. They were happy with that version of Trey Turner.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to make a change from Trey Turner. There's just not. I mean, it's just when you look at what he did last year, and all the credit to him, right? Because where he was going into 2025, it was highly debatable whether Trey Turner could be a leadoff hitter for the Phillies, and he made the adjustments that were needed to go into that role and was really good. Top five MVP candidate in the National League, finished fifth in the voting. Yeah, there's no reason to really dwell on this one, Tim. If Trey Turner could be the guy he was in 25, again in 26, the Phillies will be very, very happy.
Absolutely. This is where it gets interesting. At the number two spot, and I don't think this will surprise you having listened to Rob Thompson at the winter meetings, but
Yeah,
number two is Bryce Harper. I
yeah,
know he's traditionally, but Scott Boras spoke to Todd Zalecki shortly after the Dave Dombrowski elite, not elite comments and said, well, one of the things that can help a guy is seeing more pitches. And it is true. Different people, Destiny Legardo, Todd Zalecki, have gone through and kind of broken down the numbers that he didn't see a ton of pitches last year. And that's because he didn't have like a huge hitter hitting behind him. If he hits 30, he's still not going to have that. So Rob Thompson acknowledged at the winter meetings that while decisions. He hasn't spoken with the guys. Like he has thought long and hard about potentially making that flip of having. And I do think that's what you're going to see to begin the season.
yeah. I agree with you, and I've long been a believer that Bryce Harper should hit leadoff, although he doesn't ever want to hit leadoff. Remember the one game that he did that in 2025? He was kind of biting his tongue about the opportunity to try that, and had a terrible game batting leadoff, and then they never did it again. But I'm a firm believer, much in the way that other teams use their best hitters to lead off, that Bryce Harper should be the Phillies leadoff hitter because he's a mix of on base and power. Because he won't do it, and Turner had the great year last year, I'm fine with keeping Turner there. But yeah, Harper needs to be two. And I know where you're going with number three, and this flip makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Well, three is Kyle Schwarber. And I will continue to say 6 home runs and $50 million extension to mess with anything. Like there's part of me that just thinks, yeah, Bryce Harper more protection, but you just paid Kyle Schwarber $150 million with Bryce Harper protecting him. So it's a little weird, but I mean, I also personally, although it worked, I don't know that I ever would have moved Kyle Schwarber from the leadoff spot. So there's part of me that just thinks this guy has been so locked in the last few years. Wherever he hits, he's going to have success.
Yeah, and not only that, Tim, and I thought that this was kind of the most important thing, and Rob said it to us at the winter meetings. I mean, Kyle Schwarber had a career year last year. You can't expect 56 home runs again. right, next year. If he does it, it's fantastic, right? But you got to assume there's going to be a little bit of regression, and but at the same time, teams are going to worry about the fact that he can put the ball out of the ballpark at any time. And so therefore you maybe have to pitch a little bit better to give Bryce a little bit more to hit, knowing Schwarber's behind him, and Schwarber's a guy who's going to work pitchers, right? So it's not that you just get through Bryce and then, okay, we got one more guy. Like, Schwarber's going to take pitches with the best of them. And so a pitcher's going to really have to, you're still facing the same three guys. You're just now forcing pitchers to give Bryce Harper a little bit more to swing at. And hopefully that brings back the old Bryce and not necessarily the Bryce that you saw in 2025.
I know there's some people that would like to see Kyle Schwarber hit cleanup. The Phillies don't have a great cleanup hitter, as we'll get to in a second. I'm not having a player not hit in the first inning, personally. Having him hit third, to me, is already kind of enough of a compromise. I would not consider having him hit fourth. I'm assuming you're in agreement with that.
Yes, and the reason is, and I think, Tim, we get stuck in this town, and it's probably elsewhere too, but we live in the circle of Philadelphia. We get stuck in the notion that everything has to be done the way it used to be back in the old days. And there are a variety of reasons why batting cleanup is not the same as it used to be in 25 years ago, right? I mean, the first and most obvious reason is you now have a DH. You no longer have a pitcher batting ninth, so you have a major league hitter hitting in the 9 position. That guy's going to get on base a heck of a lot more than a pitcher used to. So therefore, having a better hitter batting leadoff and not just a slap hitter who's going to get on base is going to be a more productive spot in the lineup than maybe it used to be back in the day. But also, you've come to the determination nowadays where there's more power today than there was in the past. So having guys, multiple guys towards the top of the lineup who can slug and put the ball out of the ballpark, that's a good thing, right? You want to jump on starting pitchers in the first inning. That's when most runs are scored on starting pitchers. So you want your best hitters hitting right away. Like, there's so many things that lean towards that. I know a lot of people want to make the argument, we're going to get into the cleanup hitter here in just a second. A lot of people want to make the argument that batting, a team like the Dodgers, the Dodgers, they had a better cleanup hitter than the Phillies, and that was the difference between the two. Did they have a better cleanup hitter than the Phillies? They did, but it wasn't because all of a sudden the guys that they had hitting fourth were these big power bats. They weren't. It was Will Smith and Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, they hit some home runs, but they were more guys that, especially Will Smith, who did it a lot, is an on-base guy. He, hits doubles and drives. He did what Alec Boehm was supposed to do, kind of in that 4-hole, right? And then that Boehm never really became, other than for half of a season. That's why they're able to extend their lineup. That's what the 4-hitter should be, somebody that helps you extend your lineup, not necessarily as somebody who hits 40-plus home runs.
Well, and if you want to say that Will Smith does what Alec Boehm is supposed to do, Teoscar Hernandez has done what Nick Castellanos was supposed to do.
Correct.
So
Correct.
What he did 2 years ago, and Teoscar Hernandez is a disaster in right. So, and they can't put him at DH because they have Ohtani. So they're kind of stuck with him defensively. But he's been kind of what you anticipated Nick Castellanos being, and there obviously have been some moments, and we don't need to relitigate his whole 4 years. I'm sure there'll be a time to do that. Not today, but you get the point. I have also thought about this. People in Philadelphia do always want to do things the way they used to be done, specifically when Philadelphia teams won. And I think a lot of people look back at 2008 and they say, well, Ryan Howard in a lot of those moments was your best hitter. He was hitting fourth. First of all, you had Jimmy Rollins, who was an MVP, Chase Utley, who should have been an MVP at some point. And in between those two, you had Shane Victorino or Jason Worth, who were all-star level players. The Phillies do not have a fourth player like that. Secondly, if I'm putting together that lineup today, I'd probably go Rollins, Utley, Howard, and have Howard hit third and have Jason Worth hit fourth, or Pat Burrell hit fourth. So yes. I don't think you'd be doing it the same way, even if you had that same group, and you'd have a DH. So maybe you'd have Jim Thome there too. I don't know. But regardless of that, we get to the fourth where the Phillies don't have any options, anything like that. And I really struggled with this one. I ended up going with Adolis Garcia at the cleanup spot because I do think part of an opening day lineup is let's try some new things. Let's throw the fan base, especially in this town, like a bone. if you come back with Alec Boehm, I think there's going to be a lot of frustration. The flip side, and the reason I really struggle with it beyond how Adolis Garcia has hit the last 2 seasons, is that the Phillies talked about they don't want to have him play hero ball. And having him hit cleanup, not only on opening day, but against his former team, does that put him in that mindset to try and play hero ball? I think it's fair to wonder that. But ultimately, I don't see, with the current roster construction, another option to hit cleanup. JT Realmuto, maybe they re-sign him. I was only going on guys that are on the team today. And frankly, JT Realmuto had a 700 OPS last year, so that's not a very good option to hit cleanup either. So I go with Garcia, but I don't feel particularly good about it.
Yeah, and I think that you're right in the sense that they want to just show something different at the beginning. I'm not locked into Garcia being the cleanup hitter. In fact, I ultimately think that assuming, and this is still an assumption, on January 1st, that Alec Boehm is your third baseman for this year, assuming he is, I think that he's going to be the guy that probably gets the most at bats over the course of 2025, at least up until the trade deadline, as your cleanup hitter. It might start as Garcia on opening day, and for all the reasons you said, I'm with you. But I think over the course of that first half of the year, you're going to see Alec Boehm back in that spot at some point.
Yeah, I agree with you. Then we go to the number 5 spot, and it's important to remember the Phillies are playing the Rangers, so I don't know yet if it will be Nathan Eovaldi or Jacob deGrom, but it'll be one of those two right-handed pitchers. So you will go with your left-handed hitting lineup, which means Brandon Marsh, who hit 300 against right-handed pitchers last year and had an 838 OPS, I believe, he hits fifth. And I know the postseason left a bad taste in people's mouths, and understandably so, but I have him in left field hitting fifth opening day, and I don't feel terrible about it.
No, I think that you saw him bat in that spot down the stretch with regularity and did pretty well in that spot. Yes, the postseason was different, but that's a 4-game sample versus a 2-month sample, right? And so I'll take the 2-month sample over the 4-game sample any day. And I agree with you that against right-handed pitching, that Brandon Marsh will hit fifth in this lineup. Yeah, because they're going to alternate. They're not going to. You're already going back-to-back lefties at 2 and 3. You're not going to go, back-to-back righties and then have multiple lefties towards the bottom of the lineup. You're going to try and spread it out later on, and so I think that you're going to put slot Marsh between two right-handed hitters on either side of him. So yeah, I think Brandon Marsh against righties will bat fifth.
So obviously, if I don't have Alec Boehm hitting fourth, I do have him hitting sixth. He did 2 years ago against deGrom, 3 years ago now, against deGrom on opening day in Texas, take him deep to the right center field bullpen. And I remember there was a lot of buzz coming into that year about, is this going to be the breakout year for for Alec Boehm? And I remember after the game asking Nick Castellanos, do you feel like he's kind of taken that next step? And he just looked at me and said, sure. So, but I do think Alec Boehm hits sixth here in this instance. And yeah, I mean, again, I get people are fatigued by it. I did not enter the offseason necessarily thinking that Alec Boehm would be back. But
you got Nick Castellanos on the brain today.
I did not anticipate Alec Boehm would be back, but here we are. And based off of the guys in the roster, if he's not hitting fourth, he's definitely hitting sixth.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I think that this is the one spot where ultimately it will flip. I think ultimately Boehm will hit 4 and Garcia will hit 6 is what I think it will ultimately be. But I think opening day, I think you're right. They'll probably go Garcia 4, Boehm 6. Although I want to, afterward to get through this lineup, I'd like to kind of look at it from if they have a left-handed pitcher. Like what if they face a lefty? What will it look like then?
So Bryson Stott then becomes your number 7 hitter. And again, I know people are still have this idea about Ketel Marte in their head that I've never felt like the Phillies match up particularly well in a trade. Obviously, if you had Ketel Marte, whether he hits cleanup or you push Harper or Schwarber down, that fixes that problem. So I'm not disputing how good of a player he is.
You could probably split up Harper and Schwarber if you have Ketel Marte.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, sounds great. I don't, unless the Phillies are giving up Aiden Miller or Andrew Painter, they're definitely not giving up Painter, and I don't think they're going to give up Miller. I think that trade's unlikely, but who knows? as things stand today, that's what we're doing. Bryson Stott hits 7th, and I felt like mid-season Bryson Stott was trending towards non-tender discussion. I don't think he would have ended up getting non-tendered, but like it was that bad. The bat speed was so slow. Uh, he really bounced back in a major way. And this is one of the things when people say, well, what does Kevin Long do? He had like a waggle with his bat that he did before his load up that he stopped doing around that time, and it completely transformed what he did in the second half of the season. He was tremendous after 4th of July, let's say, and went from a guy that you're talking about, is he even going to be on the team next year, to now you feel pretty decent with him there. Even again, I know you're running this back with a lot of similar guys. I get that, but if you get the version of him that you got in the second half of the season last year, that's a really good player.
No, it really is. And they started working on that. It was, I believe, around the 4th of July, like making that change. But he didn't really employ it, if you remember, Tim, until the day that his was it his son was born, right? Or was it a daughter? I forget now. But he had a child that was born. It was during a game against Boston, right, in late July. And from that point forward to the end of the season, and we're not talking about a small sample here, you're talking about 57 games, right? He hit 307 with a 376 on base and an 885 OPS. Now, granted, he was playing predominantly against righties because Sosa was playing against lefties. That's a platoon that you're going to have probably again this year, but it's a good platoon, and if he hit well on the strong side of that platoon, you're taking an 885 OPS out of your 7-hitter every day of the week, twice on Sunday. Like, that's a really good spot for Bryson Stott.
Yeah, I'm taking a 775 OPS out of my number 7 hitter for sure. This is where it gets a little dicey because you don't have JT Realmuto, and I do still think they'll have him, and that will change this construction, obviously. But as things stand today, I have Rafael Marchand as your catcher hitting 8th, and he didn't have great offensive production last year. I think it is a different calculation when you're talking about a guy getting 100 at bats over a 6-month season, or playing maybe not every day, but getting more of the starts than not. So
Yeah.
I think he can be better. I'm super impressed with him as a fielder. I think he throws out runners about as well as JT Realmuto, which is extremely rare. Like, I think as a backup, he is tremendous. And I do think he could be part of a timeshare for a team and be pretty good at it. I do worry about durability with him, which was a problem he had at the minor league level. But for now, I have him in at number 8.
Yeah, and I think ultimately you're right. It's gonna be Realmuto. I think, and we've said this before. I don't need to relitigate it. I think the Phillies need Realmuto, and Realmuto needs the Phillies, and so it's a marriage that will come to fruition at some point once they get past this standoff, as far as what the contract needs to look like. I think everybody will be happy in the end. But yeah, regardless, even if it's Realmuto, that's the spot he's going to bat. I'm pretty confident. I mean, he might move up against lefties in the lineup, but against righties, that's what you're going with. You're going to bat your catcher in the 8 spot, regardless of who it is.
And then the final spot is Justin Crawford. I had a few people reach out on Twitter the other day when we were doing our mailbag and say, oh, could Crawford lead off? Maybe he develops into that player at some point. The distinct impression I got from both Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski at the winter meetings was they want to have Justin Crawford play for 2 or 3 months, not really mess with him, but also not put a ton of pressure on him, and just let him go and do his thing. And then I guess around the trade deadline, you can reevaluate where things stand as you're a team trying to compete for a World Series. But my impression is that maybe it'll be left field, maybe it'll be a mix of the 2 spots, but I think opening day he will be in center field and he will bat 9th. And regardless of how well he may hit or how well he may not hit, I think he's going to hit in that number 9 spot for a pretty significant chunk of time because the Phillies don't want to put a lot of pressure on him.
1,000%. And that makes a lot of sense to bat him down there, right? I mean, look, is it possible that he comes into the American League, into the major leagues, and he starts hitting like he did at AAA and AA? And I go, oh my God, like this guy just hits at every level. well, maybe you do something different. Maybe you start sliding him up the lineup a little bit sooner. But they're going to let it go. They're going to let him breathe, and they're going to let him play with as little pressure as possible, and just say, go out there and have fun, kid. And that's what they're going to do. And that means batting him ninth to start the season, and it's a safe spot for him to be. Plus, if he does what he does, what he did in AAA and the like, that's a great bat to turn the lineup over back to your big hitters, right? So he could run the bases. He could do a lot of the same things that Turner can do. So it really kind of gives you that second leadoff hitter kind of at the bottom of the lineup, which a lot of teams would love to have.
Now, you mentioned what it would be like as a lefty, and I haven't gone through and done the work of when they will face their first lefty, but it won't be opening day on almost all certainty. But they will obviously face lefties, and there will be changes to the lineup then. If I could just point out a few, obviously, I think Otto Kemp, as things stand today, will go into left field for Brandon Marsh, and Edmundo Sosa will go into second base for Bryson Stott. And I know that angers some people, but like it worked last year. Like that's Edmundo Sosa and Bryson Stott were perfect together. I think Bryson Stott can be passable against lefties. Brandon Marsh has not been, certainly was not last season. The thing with Stott is more just how good Sosa is and the spark that he provides in a limited role, that I think it's more about getting Sosa in there than an indictment against Bryson Stott. But I think Otto Kemp hits sixth. Edmundo Sosa hits seventh, and then the rest of your lineup is probably pretty similar. Maybe Alec Boehm's hitting fourth, and Adolis Garcia, who had relatively neutral splits last year, is down a spot or whatever the case may be. But I think it's pretty similar.
I was going to say, I think you're right that Kemp would be in the sixth spot, which in essence means that you're sliding up Garcia or Boehm, whichever one that is, right? So they're going to be 4-5. Kemp is 6. The one thing I think that they would do if you have Real Muto, this is only if you have Real Muto. If it's another kind of catching tandem, then no. But if you have Real Muto, it wouldn't surprise me if he bats 7 and then Sosa 8 and Crawford 9. Like I think that's probably how they would do it. But just it's almost kind of a hat tip to Real Muto, like, hey, we know that you're kind of in the twilight here, but we'll still let you bat a spot higher against lefties.
So there will be plenty of time for these lineup projections. I usually do 3 or 4 before the season begins. The next one, which it's like a dream thinking about, will be the day that we arrive at spring training, that the Phillies pitchers and catchers are there. So warmer weather, excitement. It's
6 weeks.
Yeah,
6 weeks. That's all it is, Tim.
It's still a ways away, but I look forward to that. And like Anthony said, I don't think that I'm not someone that gets caught up and, oh my God, one day this season they had Otto Kemp hit cleanup or something. Like, I think people get too carried away with stuff like that, but it's a fun thing to do this time of the year, because I think it's a sign you're slowly but surely getting closer to this stuff happening. So will be fun. Anthony, before we get out of here, I wanted to do a few fearless predictions for 2026. The first that I will start with, and then we can go to one of yours, is that I think Trey Turner will win a second consecutive batting title. If he continues on the same approach that he had last year, and let's face it, the standard isn't that high in the league right now. He only had to hit 304. If you tell me that this year Trey Turner hits 308 or something and that wins it, like, I could certainly see that happening. So to me, the only concern with Trey Turner is he's had hamstring injuries in back-to-back years. He's going to turn 33 this year. He's a guy that his game is predicated on speed. 2 years ago, he had a left hamstring injury. This past year, he had a right hamstring injury. Not a great sign as you age and you're a speed-based player. But I think, to me, he's someone that when he is on the field, I think he'll age well. Now, the health concerns me, but I do believe he'll continue to hit for a long time.
Yeah, the one thing the only thing that makes me give pause to that, and I'm with you because I think that he's going to have an average around 300. The only thing that gives me pause to that is I do know from talking to him at the end of last season that he was a little bit disappointed in the fact that he didn't have a few more home runs. And I do wonder if there's a slight trade-off because the team lacked power outside of Schwarber and a little bit of Harper. if there's a little bit of trade-off to say we're okay if your average dips to like 285, but you get back to 20 home runs. You know what I'm saying? So like that's the only thing as far as with the batting title where I think that you might see a slight change with Turner, but I wouldn't touch it. I would say, suck it up, Trey. This is the player that you are, and you're really good at it. You don't need to be a power guy. We have enough behind you. Keep doing what you're doing. But so I think that's a good prediction. That's a good prediction.
Yeah, I don't think the Phillies would make that trade-off. I think Trey Turner might make that trade-off, but
Yeah.
if you ask me which one's more valuable, the guy that is just constantly roping singles into the outfield, and yes, he's lightning fast, so he's going to hit doubles. He went from hitting 0 triples 2 years ago, and part of that was because he was hesitant after the hamstring injury. But he hit 7 triples last year. He stole 36 bases. I think maybe that's where the trade-off is. Maybe there's a little less stolen bases because that does put a lot of wear and tear on you. But I think in terms of getting on base and then using that speed, I think he's going to continue to do pretty similar to what he did last year.
Yeah, I love when young guys like you dig the kind of baseball that was played in the 80s. It makes me feel young again. All right, so here's my big stick your neck out fearless prediction for 2026. We're going to have Bryce Harper have his first over 900 OPS season since 2021 when he won the MVP. And I firmly believe that we've talked about this. This was an intentional statement by Dombrowski, and it was done to light a fire under Bryce Harper. And I think Bryce Harper is going to be out to prove it to everyone that he is still one of the best players in the game. And I think you're going to get that kind of season out of him this year, obviously assuming health. I think you're looking at a plus 900 OPS. I'm not going to say he's going to have an MVP year, but I think that you're looking at a guy that's going to be better than he was a year ago, and that's going to help this Phillies lineup immensely.
Well, if he has a plus 900 OPS and you have the narrative around him, he's going to be in the MVP race, if not the MVP. He is, I believe, 37 home runs away from 400. Do you think he gets to that this year?
Yes. Assuming health. Assuming health. I think that's the kind of season that he's going to put together.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem with this whole narrative. Maybe it was done to light a fire under him, but to me, the biggest problem has been injuries. And
yeah.
As you age, like that's not really something you can control. So I think, yeah, if he stays healthy, I do think Bryce Harper will be a better player. I think he would have been, regardless of whether Dave Dombrowski had said that or not. Obviously, he's running with it, and I'm super excited whenever the first time he talks is going to be to kind of get his thoughts on it, because he could have kind of just let it die. That the TikTok and that he posted wearing that shirt, like, clearly it's something he's ready to embrace.
Yeah, and that's fans should get behind that, I think. I know that there's a mix. There's people who are, LFG, let's go, Bryce, this is going to be awesome. And then there's also people who think that he's, being a little petty, right? And like, all right, let it go. It was not that big a deal. And you're dwelling on whatever it takes to drive an elite athlete to be better. Let it be. Let it be. I'm always like this. Even when you have like a team that's really good and they think, I'll take like when the Eagles we're the underdogs. Oh, nobody believes in us. It's okay. Even though it may not be true, let them think that, because that's going to make them a better player or a better team in that instance. I'm 100% behind it. Let Bryce feel the way he feels, be a little bit salty, and go out and prove everybody wrong.
You have to be delusional to a certain degree to be a professional athlete, especially at Getty's making an untold amount of money. But to be someone that keeps doing the same thing for 20 years, eventually, like, it does get a little stale. You have to find new things to continue motivating you. And even if this was not even meant as a shot, if he takes it as that and it drives, I mean, the thing is, Bryce Harper has always been like a tireless worker, though. So that's the part where this is not someone like we talked about Ketel Marte as somebody that like is a great player, but sometimes like there have been some issues in his career where guys wonder how locked in is he. It's never been that way with Bryce Harper. That's the thing where this narrative kind of falls to me, but I'm interested to see how it plays out. I want to run 2 other quick ones by you before we get out there. The first, I think the Phillies will have multiple relievers in the All-Star game. So Joe Duran would be one, but that would likely anyone else could emerge because who would have thought Matt Strahm would have been an All-Star a few years ago? But that would mean either Jose Alvarado or Brad Keller would be your second All-Star most likely. And then the other prediction is that NLDS or NL Wild Card Series, whatever is the first Phillies playoff game, the starting third baseman will be Aiden Miller.
I like both. They're both really interesting. I'm with you on the relievers. I just because I think that there's been an influx of this over the last couple of years in Major League Baseball, where you add middle relief guys to the All-Star game, right? And the Phillies did, like you pointed out, with Strahm and Hoffman, right? Those guys, no one would have expected that a couple years ago, and then they were there. Yeah, so I'm with you that you could get the two. Aiden Miller as the starting third baseman is fascinating to me, because if we're in a situation where we're saying, we just did the lineups where Alec Bohm is in your lineup, whether he's hitting fourth or sixth, and he is your third baseman come opening day, where does he end up? What happens between opening day and the first playoff game to Alec Bohm that Aiden Miller is starting in the playoffs? Like, that to me would be a fascinating story that I want to know. I want to flip the book to the end right now to find out what that is, because that's fascinating.
I think it would have to be that less of an indictment on Alec Bohm and more just that Aiden Miller forces your hand, and maybe he forces your hand to play second base. I kind of doubt it, because then you also have the what do you do with Sosa on top of what do you do with Stott. But you could, if you're in this situation, call up Aiden Miller, give him the reins at third base, and then Alec Bohm, if he's having a nice season, becomes someone, if you need a seventh inning reliever or someone like that, that you move middle of the season. It's a little unorthodox, but it's certainly not something that hasn't that another contending team says, let's say the Mariners roll with a younger guy at third base, Williamson at third base to begin the season. It's not working. They call the Phillies up in July and say, hey, we know you have Aiden Miller ready to go. Like, what would it take to get Alec Bohm? I don't know. It would be rolling the dice, because I don't think you're going to have a long, if any, runway with Aiden Miller before that to really feel like he for sure can do this. You'd be taking a leap of faith. But if he's as good as we're led to believe, it seems like he's going to be in play in the middle of this season, and you're not calling him up to be the 26th man.
Yeah. It'd be fascinating. I'm in. I'm in for it. I think that's a compelling storyline. The last one I will give you is, I think that by midseason we're going to go. Not we, because I think we know, but I think that fans are going to go, oh, okay, this is why we didn't trade Andrew Painter.
Yeah.
I don't. That's not to say he's going to burst onto the scene like Paul Skeens. I'm not saying that, but I think that you're going to see enough of Andrew Painter and enough good of Andrew Painter to go, oh, all right, now I see why that they were so reluctant to move him in any deal. I think that I'm not going to give you any specific numbers for him. I just say that the general feeling will be, oh yeah, this guy belongs in the major leagues, and he's going to be a part of our rotation for a long time.
I was looking at it this morning, not that I'm a gambler, but I was looking at it, and 11 people have shorter odds to win NL Rookie of the Year next year than Andrew Painter. He's at plus 2,000. He's Justin Crawford's below. No disrespect to Justin Crawford, but if I'm putting my money on any one of the Phillies to win it, it's Andrew Painter. Again, it's a leap of faith, because you're assuming a big jump year two back from Tommy John surgery. But yeah, I think that was certainly something I considered, and it would not surprise me remotely. And Nolan McLean is a heavy favorite. He is a really good, really impressive young pitcher. Connor Griffin, depending when the Pirates call him up. Jonas Hong, assuming the Mets don't trade him in a bigger deal. Like, there's a lot of good candidates next year. But yeah, Andrew Painter, I think, is kind of being slept on in this race. And a little further down, Aiden Miller's at plus 3,000. So it's been a long time.
He's a later. The problem with Miller is he's later. I don't think he gets up into the season soon enough to be in that conversation. But Painter's going to be there from day one, and likely, and that's going to be that's why I think you're right. I think that those numbers are sleeping on him just a little bit.
It will be interesting. We have a whole year of baseball set to come, and hopefully it will be a fun season. For now, I'm Tim Kelly. He's Anthony SanFilippo. Check out all our work at onpattison.com. Thank you to Wapner Newman for sponsoring this episode, and we will talk to you guys next time.